Hi, Shawnae. Good to see you back on the daily agenda again. It's been like
Hello.
what, 3 weeks was it, or something like that? 4 weeks, something of that nature. So
Yeah.
you've got loads of snow there. You said
Yes, we do.
in
Tons
Minnesota.
of it. Oh yeah.
Yeah. When you say loads of snow, how much is loads of snow?
Well, right now there's probably about 2 or 3 feet on the ground, and we've got more coming within the next couple of weeks.
Wow. Lucky you. We haven't got any at all. No, I mean this is the thing. Yuletide, as it used to be here, it's still Yuletide, but by the beginning of November, usually, say 45 years ago or more, and I'm 57 now, so yeah, even 50 years ago, um, probably the end of the first week in November, we'd have snow sometime sooner. And, it would be piled high, and some winters it would be really deep, and, you'd have to like dig your way out of the back door and
Yeah.
go out and get coal and wood, etc. Because it was many years ago and we didn't have central heating where I lived, and we just had a coal fire, which warmed up the house and also the hot water, etc. Now there's just nothing, and outside it's raining, but it has actually turned into the exactly the type of winter I predicted it would be, because what we had here this year was a drought. And you might think, oh, that's really odd for England. Not really, because technically speaking, the country had droughts every year because of
Yeah.
poor management of reservoir stock, basically. But this year, um, from the middle of February right through to the middle of August, there was barely a drop of rain, and it was
Mm.
mostly sunny. It was sunny, mostly sunny here for 90% of that time. Not very hot. The hottest it ever got here was 30 centigrade, but it was mostly sunny, no rain, and so therefore the trees started to. The first week in August, end of the first week in August, the birch trees were going yellow, which is really odd. I was like, wow, autumn's coming early, but no, it's because they've got no water. They're having to drop the leaves, you see, to
Hmm.
conserve resources. So I said to a friend of mine, I said, well, what this really means is that when the rain comes, and it did about 2 weeks later, properly, and not oceans of it. That didn't really come until late September. What it means is, we're going to have a very wet winter, lots of rain, and it just rains most of the time now. So instead of having snow, we've got rain. Further north, they've had quite a bit of snow, and other parts of the country as well, in the south and southwest. But we've not had anything at all, not even one snowflake. They're all on social media.
This is the first year in a couple of years that we've had snow like this time of year. I think last year we didn't get snow until Christmas Eve. And probably the year before, pretty close to that. There was a couple of little dustings, but nothing that stayed. And now this year, I think it's going to be cold and lots of snow because
Yeah.
we've already started established a little pattern of like it'll warm up enough to snow for like a little bit and then a cold snap. And
Yeah.
then we have that pretty much scheduled out for the next couple of weeks. It will warm up, snow for a couple of days, and then a cold snap again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Usually what happens when we get these rainy winters here now, um, probably around about mid-January, through to the end of February, we get lots of cold weather. But we'll see, because, everything's in flux with the climate
do you
tampering.
guys get below zero?
Do we? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was below zero, not last night, the night before. We had freezing fog. Yeah, I mean, 3 years ago, I was in the Wye Forest, in the West Midlands, not far from the border with Wales, near Shropshire. And if you ever watched, the historical dramas like The White Princess and The White Queen, etc., Ludlow Castle features in it quite heavily, which is Shropshire on the border with Wales. So yeah, I mean, one night I was out there doing astrophotography at it was 3 o'clock in the morning and it was 12 below, and the weather forecast was for 7 below, but all weather is localized, you see. And I was in a valley, well, on a hillside, pointing down into a valley with two rivers and thousands of trees in the foreground. And so all weather is localized. And because I'm sort of like halfway down the hill towards the rivers, the cold is rolling down off the hill,
Mhm.
into the valley. Yeah, it was freezing, and I just had stood there for about 40 odd minutes doing astrophotography. And then a friend of mine said to me, Corey, you're really hardcore doing that. I said, well, I wanted some astro photos, but it was really cold. And then I went back in and warmed up a little and went to sleep and, got up as usual and did the day's work. And yeah, there was quite a bit of snow at that time, but it's just intermittent here. A white Yuletide is unheard of, really. Whereas years ago, crikey, because I'm right on the border with Derbyshire, so the Peak District, which is quite mountainous, lots of large hills, is like less than 20 miles away. And everything that used to come from that direction used to hit us as well. That's in Derbyshire. I've been out in blizzards here many times, total whiteouts. And what usually happens in a whiteout is people just run everywhere to get out of the whiteout. And I love it because I'm like,
Yeah.
yay, there's just me and no one else. Brilliant. Me in the snow. Fantastic. But I've not seen that here for quite some time. The last blizzard I experienced in England was, I think it was March 2018, which was called The Beast from the East. It was a massive snow bomb from Siberia, and it blasted us for about a week, probably a little more. And I remember walking along Ball Lane in Leeds one evening. It was about 7 p.m., and the snow was driving so fast, it felt like somebody was scratching your face. It was a really full blown blizzard. And yet down on the south coast, we had friends in Brighton, in Sussex, they didn't have any snow at all. But up north, as it's called, Nooth, it was really ferocious and very cold. But yeah, I mean, here it's crazy. It's bizarre weather, and a lot of it's to do with cloud seeding and weather tampering, in my opinion, as opposed to climate change. I don't buy into the whole climate change theory, quite frankly, but
There.
the odds of us getting a white Yuletide here are highly unlikely, unless, of course, a snow bomb comes out of nowhere because the weather forecast for the next 4 days is rain,
Ugh.
and it started tonight and it's going to go all the way through the night, right through to tomorrow night without stopping, it says. But we'll see. Weather forecasts are quite unreliable. But so, what are you doing over there for Yuletide? What preparations have you made?
Um, my tree, I put up my tree, put up all my decorations around the house, and I have a little altar for my ancestors
Yeah,
and have a little shelf for like offerings for the house spirit,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and just little things that we do around the house.
Uh-huh.
Um, the kids will be back this week from their dad, so I am forcing them to make decorations.
Oh.
We make decorations every year for just my little tradition. I think that if they make one every year for Christmas or Yule or whatever, they can they by the time they leave my house, they'll have enough for their own tree.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I should hope so. I mean, I've gone for the light version this year, as you can see behind me. I've just dressed the fireplace basically, and because last year I put loads of stuff up, and I just thought this year I just don't feel like doing it. It just, I don't know. Every year is different, isn't it? And I just thought, well, the minimalist thing is good by me. I've got the statues of the gods behind me, Freya and Odin, and the goddess there, and loads of crystals, and it looks okay to me. It gets it into the mood, into the spirit, basically a bit. But I just don't want loads of it around me this year for some reason. I don't know. I
Right.
just don't. I'm not feeling it. You know, not feeling it at all. I'll feel it, I guess. I never really do tend to feel it these days now. For the last few years, many years actually, until it gets to the winter solstice, then I start to feel it. I mean, I've not really had a really intense Yule since um, since December 2018 when I was in York and staying at a place next to the River Ouse, the old Viking capital of England. And yeah, it was a really intense Yule that year. And but since then, I've not really had a very intense Yule, which is a shame because I like an intense Yule.
Isn't that kind of the reason for the season? Like, all the darkness and you're hibernating and whatever, and you go inward, you're stuck in the house,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
and that, those things. And then once solstice come, it's the return of the sun,
it
and the
is.
days start to get longer
Yeah,
and you have some more energy
yeah,
and
albeit slowly. But I mean, the way I look at it is, so what, we're what, is it 14th of December? Yeah. So we're less than 2 months away from the rise of spring, which here is 8th of February. So by 8th of February here, usually you should see crocus bulbs, snowdrops, and I've planted loads of fritilia as well, and hopefully they'll come through. They usually do. And so that to me is what I'm looking forward to because I hate January, always have done all of my life. And this year I was dreading going into winter because I thought, oh no, I've been out nearly all summer, you know, at the great
Mhm.
locations and recording for the channel, etc., and just really just chilling and absorbing beautiful countryside and being away from people as much as I can and conurbations and then suddenly the dark winter nights come, it's freezing cold, the nights are very long, and it's like, oh man, please, honestly, really cramping my style, you know. And but I never felt like that when I was younger. But as you get older, you have different reactions to things, and with having,
Yeah.
this bad problem with Crohn's disease, it particularly has affected me this year because I thought, like, I'm gonna be stuck in here most of winter. It's just so bloody annoying. But I mean, I don't want to sound like some miserable old grandpa, although I probably do. But in truth, that's exactly where I'm at, and I suppose I'll get into the swing of it. And then, of course, because of the Crohn's disease and the problem with UTIs caused by it, you know, you, I just can't have alcohol or hardly any alcohol as well. And food is I have to be very selective with that. So yeah, it's like you know,
That would be just that would suck. That would put a damper on everything
yeah,
because really, I mean, you think about it, this is the time where you gorge. You're
yeah,
putting on the pounds for winter to stay warm and this and that and
yeah,
cooking. Like there's so much food
yeah.
during this time.
Yeah, I mean, in autumn, there's a great place. Well, there's lots of places around here, but there's a great place about less than a mile away where there's just a huge thicket of blackberry bushes. But dark fruits and Crohn's disease are a disaster, particularly anything
Oh.
with pips. And so every year I used to go and collect loads and loads of blackberries, clean them out, and freeze quite a bit as well. And I'd make lovely apple and blackberry crumbles, and I'd put um, sliced almonds on it, etc. And I'd make it with honey, not sugar, and no sugar
Mm.
at all, even in the crumble mixture itself. And so all that's gone out of the window as well because, as I said, dark fruits, with the exception of blueberries, are a disaster. Anything grapes are just a nightmare. If I ate a punnet of grapes, I would be in agony for days. That's
Mm.
just the way it is. And so, yeah, and plums. I used to love making plums as well. I used to make plum crumbles. So you saute the plums very slowly. Like simmer them very slowly with a bit of brown sugar or honey, whatever is your taste. And can't do that either, you see, because it's the same problem. Damsons as well, fantastic. But hey ho, that's the way it is. And I'm just dealing with a new type of Yuletide and have been for the last few years. It's called the Crohn's disease Yuletide.
Sad.
But even the snow. I mean, I don't even think if it snowed, it would actually get me into the spirit of it. Because I know, seriously, I'm just not feeling it at all. It's like, this is not Yuletide. It doesn't feel like Yule to me. It's like each year feels less and less like Yule. And yeah, I used to love Yule. And just a few years ago, I was mad keen on celebrating it and always started early. And each year, I put up fewer decorations and feel it less and less. But that's just the way it is. But ultimately, yeah, I always honour the winter solstice. So, what are you doing for the winter solstice?
Honestly, I'm not exactly sure because next weekend, well, we'll have the kids, so I don't know that they're gonna want to do anything. I might take them to Bentleyville,
Yeah.
and that's like a big city of lights,
Wow.
basically.
Well,
But
they'll enjoy that.
they're at the age where they just don't care about any of those things. They just want their friends and to
Mm,
do their teenage things,
yeah.
not with me. They used to get way into the ornament making and all of that stuff and like to bake bread. Usually, if I don't make candles or something like that, I'll make banana bread or something, cookies, something like that for people for Christmas.
Yeah.
So I don't have to buy a bunch of crap. I can just make things for
Yeah.
people.
I love banana bread. It's fantastic. That's good for with Crohn's disease. I don't have any problems with that. In fact, there's a banana loaf here that I like to buy, and I don't get it all the time, but occasionally I'll buy it, and you just take a slice off it, and then you get this. It's called dairy milk chocolate spread. And you just spread a layer of it on it. It's like wow. Sometimes I just because the problem all of my life I've had serious problems with eating breakfast, and when I worked in construction for many years, I never had breakfast at all. I'd just go to work, really hard physical labour as well, and I wouldn't eat until midday. I'd just have coffee, and then another coffee, the early morning
I'm the
break.
same way. I'm not a breakfast person
Yeah,
usually.
usually I have usually can get a good selection of organic bananas, but at the moment, the selection's quite poor because it's midwinter. And I've sort of gone off those as well, actually, because the thing with Crohn's disease, it just you have these very strong likes and dislikes. It's like chicken. I've got a really strong dislike for chicken again. I'm eating mostly duck and turkey and prawns and fish. And I have
Okay.
people on here saying, "Oh, you should eat the carnivore diet." You can shove the carnivore diet where the sun doesn't shine. It's a myth. It doesn't cure Crohn's disease at all. It works for some people, but in truth, all of this
It
red
does
meat,
work for some people.
it's like the keto diet. That works for some people. I've tried that. It didn't do anything for me at all. In fact, if anything, it actually made the lower half much worse. And I used to like dried ginger, crystallized ginger. I used to love to put that in my tea, and I found that was causing problems, so I had to stop using that as well. And it cleared up a lot. But the thing was, Crohn's is just spasmodic. It's been playing up again for about the last oh, 4 days, and it's extremely painful. And when you get a break from it, it's like, oh wow, brilliant. How long will it last? you
Yeah.
know. So if you get a window with no pain and no symptom, well, it's not a case of no symptoms or very little in the way of symptoms. It's like, way, get the flags out, fantastic. But yeah, it's a real ball ache, quite frankly. Crohn's disease is, and most people think, oh yeah, it's just a digestive disorder. It's not. It's an autoimmune disorder. The immune system is wired wrongly, and sends signals to the intestinal tract to attack healthy tissue, which it perceives as
Mhm.
being a foreign invader. So diet in itself is not actually going to stop it. You know, it can control it, moderate it, etc. I mean, if you know there are certain foods that are causing you lots of problems, and you carry on using those foods, same with drinks, then that's just the way it is. You've only got yourself to blame for it. But I know what
Yeah,
foods
that's
will
true.
trigger and what won't. and it's like fruitcake. I used to love fruitcake.
I was just thinking I was gonna ask you, do you guys have fruitcake there? Do
Yeah,
you guys have
lots.
fruitcake?
Yeah,
It's
lots.
fucking disgust oh, I'm sorry, it's
It's all
disgusting.
no, no, it's not everybody's cup of tea, is it really? But I actually bought a slab last week, which had got a very thin layer of marzipan on and a very thin layer of icing sugar. Because too much sugar is really bad because of the UTI problem, and it's actually soaked in brandy. And I thought, well, I'll just leave it in the cupboard, and I might get round to eating it at some time. But the thing is, I like fruitcake, but it has a really bad effect sometimes, on the digestive tract, and it can be extremely painful. So I'll just cut a small slice. But I've actually discovered a new cake. This was supposed to be about Yuletide, and we're talking about cakes.
Yeah, I know.
But hey, it's Yule, and Yule is everything to do with cakes, isn't it? So I discovered a new cake. There's a shop here called Marks and Spencer's, and I have to go there for my mother's gluten-free products. Excuse me. And I was there like about a month ago, and I saw this new cake, which is banana cake with salted caramel and buttercream icing. And I was like,
Oh, yeah.
wow, man, this I've got to try. And I did, and I was like, yeah, nice. So I'll buy one every week now because I have to go there once a week to get gluten-free products. And I always treat myself. It's quite expensive, but once a week. So what? I mean, I can't go out drinking and going to restaurants, etc. So
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
an expensive cake once a week. Who cares, man? It's just nice, and that doesn't cause any problems at all, actually. But certain type of things, yeah. I mean, I will really cause problems. Like dark chocolate. I love dark chocolate. Massive problems. Really, really severe pain as well with it. If you have like two, like that much, two or three segments, it's no problem at all. Very good for the respiratory system as well on a daily basis. But if I was to do what some people do, I eat a whole bar of it, oh man, I would be in agony. Absolute
Mm.
agony. So yeah, there's loads of stuff I've had to cut out, and I actually found some Bendix vitamins, which are fantastic. And I try and have one of those every day, just one, because it's very intensive with peppermint oil, and it helps to.
Right. Sorry, my cat is
The cat's getting into the Yule. The cat has become the house spirit. It's the Yule spirit.
the old cat.
It's the Yule cat.
Yeah,
Absolutely right.
she's a terrorist, like
What
I
colour is the cat?
imagined. She's like a blackish gray, like I
Ah,
don't know.
so a coal cat.
She's got a different color to her. It all actually her coloring, she's even got like a little mask on her face. Freya, come here.
Ah,
Come here.
come
It's
on, buddy cat. Let's have a look.
come here. Come here. She was just literally just over here.
Oh, wow. Oh, we have
So
seen
she's
pictures
got
of her before
black
as well. Yeah,
all
I
down
have.
her back,
Yeah,
but then she's got a little mask and
she's a big cat.
she is
Big fluffy cat.
cute.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lion. That's a lion of
She's
a
a
cat.
beast for sure.
Yeah, damn right. We had a well, years ago. It was a really bad winter. It was 2010 actually, and I noticed these two cats used to sleep on the street under a car, and I used to feel really sorry for these two cats. One was called Snowy; he was grey and white, and the other one I didn't know what his name was. He just had this most amazing colouring, and he looked like a cross between a tiger and a leopard. And I'm sure you know what I'm going to get to. He was a Bengal, and
Yeah.
he was being neglected. And he was
Oh,
very thin and scrawny. And then the following spring, after this really bad winter, because there was snow on the ground just permanently for 3 months, and there was just more snow came all the time. And that was the last time we had a really proper winter here, in my opinion. It was like 15 years ago. And I was eating, the evening meal, and he was crying at the window. and he had this most amazing cry. And I opened the window, and I couldn't help but take pity on him. And he was starving, you could see it, and he was so thin. And it was back in the days when I still used to eat chicken, and I got the chicken off my plate and gave it to him, and he absolutely wolfed it down, and then cried at the end of it. I was like, yeah, to say thank you, and that's how I perceived it. Anyway, probably wasn't thank you,
You say
but
that it was,
have
like,
you got any
during
more?
winter time?
It's probably saying, have you
You
got
say
any
it was,
more?
like, during winter time?
Yeah. Well, it was spring. He'd come through a really
Oh.
tough winter, and he was very thin. And I thought, there's no way I can leave that cat to look like that. And then every night he would present at the rear window, roughly the same time, meow. And he had Bengals have this really peculiar cry,
Yep.
which is it's almost heartrending because it sounds like a baby, you know. It's
Mhm.
it's really, really gets to you as well. And the funny thing is, he was always my Yule cat, and I miss him terribly. Actually, even to this day, I still dream about him. I can feel his presence here sometimes. Even my mum can feel him as well. She can feel his presence around. Because I had to go away for a lot of years, didn't I? You see, as you know, Sean, you know what I'm talking about. And so yeah, he used to come back every night, and I started feeding him every night. And then my mum said, "Oh," she says, "I love that cat." She said, "Excuse me, can I take over feeding him?" I said, "Yeah, of course." So she went into town and bought him chicken breast every day. You know,
What a
right? Talk about
spoiled
going
thing.
overboard. So yeah, the problem with that was he wouldn't then eat any other food other than the finest chicken breast. It's like, and even if you gave him a chicken
Me
drumstick,
too.
it's like, don't give me that shit. I want
Mhm.
chicken breast, and he became big and muscular again, not fat, but like he used to be when we first saw him many years ago. So I think I first saw him about no, not 2012. It would have been, crikey, it would have been a few years before 2010 because he was 17 when he died. And he was in good condition then, but then he'd been neglected. And and we took over feeding him, and then he was coming in the house, etc., and making himself at home, and I was like, yeah, come on then. And he was really awkward and difficult as well, and he loved it. And he was a brilliant fighter. I saw him have lots of fights with other cats, always won. And children from all over the town used to come around and say, can we stroke your cat? I was like, yeah, of course you can, because he was a Bengal, and he looked like a cross between a tiger and a leopard, and he was absolutely beautiful, and they called him the Prince of Cats. And he used to bathe in the sunshine under the fuchsia bush, this huge fuchsia bush on the back, and he used to just sit there and bathe. I've got a photograph of him doing it, and yeah, the odd thing was I was on remand at Nottingham Prison, and totally unexpected. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was really cold as well, and I got a massive abscess here. I'd bitten into a baguette that hadn't been wrapped properly, and the end of it was rock hard, and I bit into it, cracked my tooth. You can't get to a dentist appointment quickly in prison, And then
Oh.
the screw, prison officer, we call them screws here, slang, he knocked on the door at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and said, are you Tomlin? I was like, yeah, perfectly well I am. And he started singing this song about going home, and I said, are you for real? He said, yeah, of course I'm for real. He said, what are you doing sat up there for? Because I was on the top bunk. And he says, you need to be getting ready. I said, for what? He said, you've been released on bail. I was like, have I? He said, yeah, judge in chambers hearing, which is not a formal court hearing. It's held in the judge's chambers. I said, but I thought that was 3 weeks ago. He said, no, it was today. He said, you've been released and they want you out in 5 minutes. I want you up at reception and to release you before the mad rush begins when they're coming in from court. And I was like, wow, head is in a tailspin because you're in this. I was on a really heavy duty wing as well, full of lifers, murderers. Most of the blokes on the wing were murderers. And you can imagine how heavy duty that is. First time I'd ever been in prison for hurty words, as we call it here. In other words, exercising your right to free speech, which doesn't exist here. And you know the back story to any
Here.
unemployment. But anyway, I got let out of the gates at like crikey, 5:30, I think it was, and pitch black. Obviously, it's November, freezing cold. I was like, "Wow, man, what's happening here?" So I walked into Nottingham, and because I've been cooped up in a prison cell for weeks, and I went to Tesco, this big supermarket. Thought, I'll get half a bottle of brandy because that's going to destroy the abscess. And I bought half a bottle of brandy, and I was got off the bus, which is like about 600 yards from here, and I got around the corner, and there was Mosey, the cat, our cat, and he came running from this bungalow and doing the figure of eight in between my legs and crying.
Oh,
And I said, "Yeah," I said, "You knew I was coming, didn't you?" And he just looked up and went, "Meow." And
yeah.
he knew I was coming home, because Mum said she opened the door and he just ran out, bolted out. She said, I couldn't get him back in. So he's been down at that bungalow for hours. I said, yeah, because he knew I was coming home. And that's how close we were, you see, how closely attached we were to one another. And yeah, years later, because the legal battles went on for years, we were sat in the back garden on a nice summer's day. And I was with my ex, Elizabeth, and I was wearing shorts because it was sunny and warm. And the cat came up to me, and he'd got really sharp talons as well, and I'd got an electronic tag on my ankle, and he dug both of his front paws into the ankle bracelet and tried to rip it off. And he was screaming the whole time and looking at me, really intensely and trying to rip it off. And Elizabeth said, he's trying to tell you something, I said, I know exactly what he's trying to tell me. I said, don't worry about it. I said, because it will be coming off soon at 6 o'clock in the morning in a couple of days' time. And it did when I went away on the run for years, basically. But yeah, he went missing for a week, and then suddenly he turned up the night before I was due to leave. And he came in at just gone 8 o'clock at night, and nobody knew where he'd been. We'd searched everywhere for him all week, and he collapsed on the kitchen floor, and I knew he was going to die. But I got to go at 6 o'clock the next morning because I already made my decision, and I took him to my mum, and I said goodbye to him the next morning, and never saw him again because he died a month after I'd been on the run. You see, but it was odd, surely, because you know we're spiritualists first and foremost. I tend to see myself as being a spiritualist first and foremost before an Odinist. Odinist is just the title of the faith that we practice. I would say you and I are more spiritualists first and foremost before anything. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, it's just a word, isn't it? But it does explain something. I was at this place in York. Would be 10 months after he died, and I was staying at this place outside York. And he came to me one night in this dream, and he would not leave me alone all night. And every time I fell back to sleep, he was yanking at my wrist, and my wrist literally felt like it was moving. And every time I would wake up and I'd be like, Mosey, leave me alone, what's wrong? And I realised, I thought, this cat's trying to warn me of danger, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, it came, and I had to move from there quite quickly. But yeah, he was a great cat, and that's one thing about Yule is, it always feels better when you've got a cat around. I'm sure dog owners feel the same about their dogs. But
Probably.
I'm sure you feel the same about Frey. I mean, she's probably not always well behaved, but without her, it wouldn't be the same, would it?
No, no, it would not.
And she
She's
can
a part of
hear
the
us, look.
family.
She can hear us because she's come back in frame.
Yes, she knows we're talking about
Yeah,
her.
the lion of a cat. Yeah. So,
She's cute. She actually got she at my old place, she used to go outside a lot.
yeah,
And she would come running like a dog. You could yell her name and she would be a block or 2 blocks away sometimes even.
yeah,
And she would come trotting down the street after you hollered her name,
awesome.
usually with she'd uh she'd leave mice or woodpecker. Her favorite was a woodpecker or rabbit. And she'd bring gifts and leave them at the door, like, look, mom, you
Yeah,
know.
I'm
Then
feeding
she
you.
ended up getting out for a month
Yeah.
Like, she got lost for a month, and I thought I had almost given up. I thought she was just
Wow.
gone, something ate her. Well, she wandered through the woods from Taconite to Bovee, and it took her a month. It was almost a month to the day, and we were leaving for actually an AFA bloat down in the cities.
Really?
Fall Fest, yeah. Uh and she showed up. She showed up with a freaking half a rabbit, or no, 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 no. She was found in Bovee by a lady, and a friend of mine seen the post. I had just
Yeah.
recently been banned from Facebook. That's what happened. And my friend sent me a picture and was like, "This is Freya, isn't it?" And she ended up bringing her home. And then she left for another 2 days and came back with a half a rabbit right before we left for the bloat. Like, oh, well,
Wow.
you had to go back out for one. And she had another funny story related to that. We were in this new house, and it has like an island thing that you can walk around, and the
Yeah.
TV is right there. So I was watching a documentary about bobcats,
Ah.
and she seen there were kittens and a mom on the TV, and she seen it, and she got like, you could tell she was stressed out, terrified. She started running around the circle, like peeking around, like seeing if that cat was really there.
Yeah.
I personally think, based on the scratches, like she had big scabs on her butt, so I think something maybe tried to grab her and she got away. And then when she seen that bobcat on TV, she was like, "Oh my gosh, it's gonna eat me," or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Like, she really freaked out about it. So
Wow.
she had like her own like little journey
Yeah.
away from home. And after that, I don't let her outside anymore. She tries to sneak out all the time, and I
Really.
don't. I'm not interested. Where we live now is right on the road, and it's kind of like
Yeah.
the people here will speed up to hit your cat.
Yeah. There's a lot of people like that here as well. Nasty people.
Mhm.
Nasty, horrible people, basically. But it's like,
She talks at you, like, she responds when you talk to her. She lets you know when she needs her litter box cleaned.
mm,
She lets you know when she's hungry or wants fresh water or anything. Like, she's so intelligent in the
oh,
noises she makes. I have never heard a cat make sounds like
yeah,
she
yeah,
makes.
yeah. I know what you
It's
mean.
it's weird. It's almost like she tries to talk.
Yeah, that's what it was like with my cat. I mean, I made a video of him once, and it was astonishing. Just on the phone, I mean, phone cameras weren't anywhere near as good then as they are now. But I played it back a few times. Like, wow, it's almost like he's talking, and I can almost kind of understand it. And his
Mhm.
paw was outstretched, going meow, and it was really, really deep and intense. This cry was like, wow, it's, some cats are like that, and I used to actually still say to this day, and people look at me odd, and I don't care because I don't care whether people think I'm odd or not. I think most people are odd, to tell you the truth. I say, yeah, he was more intelligent than most humans, and I mean it as
I think
well.
most animals are.
Yeah, he was. So that's my honest opinion. He was more intelligent than most humans, and they look at you as if to say, "Wow, well, what a stranger." Well, no, it's not strange because most humans are, well, fucking stupid. Truly,
Exactly.
to be crude, that's my experience of them. But most cats are actually very intelligent, and that's why I like cats. I prefer cats over dogs because I don't think dogs are actually quite as intelligent. They're much more dependent. And I know there's going to be a lot of dog owners watching this. Like, oh, how could you say such a thing? Because they post these stupid memes saying anyone who doesn't like a dog is wrong, and in other words, you're a bad person. It's like, oh, how boring, how tiresome.
I
You know?
love dogs. I just need a place that's big enough to where if I'm not home because I'm working, that they have a yard that they can run around in.
Shawnae,
So
can I
that
just tell you something. I'm sorry to interrupt you,
What's up?
but a streak of white light, like silver white light, just went straight from the corner right across your face down to there.
Really?
Yeah, it looked just
Hmm,
like a fluted orb. Really.
hmm,
Yeah, it's like otherwise I wouldn't have interrupted you. Yeah, it's bizarre.
interesting.
Yeah, maybe it's the snow spirit.
Yeah, I
You've not
don't
got the
know.
window open, have you? Letting the snow in. The window's not open, is it? No, no, I didn't think it would. No, seriously, it was, and it was quite slow moving as well. Went like that at a diagonal. So, well, it's not the first time unusual things of that nature happen. So, what are you
Oh
actually
no.
going to do for leaving dogs aside? Because I know exactly what you were going to say. I grew up with dogs, never allowed to have a cat, until adulthood, basically. So, but and I always had dogs with us, and my brothers loved the dogs, and I hated the dogs. Truly, I did, because my brothers were pretty mean and cruel. And so, what ritual are you going to perform this year? Are you going out with the Noriana Society or anything?
No. No, if I do anything for Yule, I may go to Wisconsin, but I'm not sure if
Yeah,
we're gonna do that. I may just do something by myself at home, which is usually what ends up happening anyway,
yeah,
unless I travel. And right now, as far as weather goes, I don't like to travel when it
yeah.
snows.
I'm
So
not surprised.
I probably won't be driving like 5 to 8 hours to go,
Yeah,
do a Yule celebration, or I might. It just depends on the weather and my
yeah,
general
absolutely.
feelings.
I
But
mean,
yeah, I'll probably do a solstice, some type of solstice thing. I'm going to get the stuff to make sun wheel this week. I have
yeah.
my yep, like burlap, do burlap and like
So
straw,
you're
and
going to
then
make a sun cross.
yeah,
Excellent,
yes,
excellent. Mm.
yep, probably burn that, and I don't know, some some kind of ritual that I'll think of before before next Sunday.
Yeah, that's the thing. You see, is like people often ask me and say, "Oh, but what type of ritual do you perform? And is it the same thing every time?" Well, no, it's the same festival every year. But I
Sometimes
don't do
it
the same
is
thing every
like
year.
the layout of a ritual or a bloat is usually the same for me. The
Yeah,
only thing that changes is what deity that you go with. Some people do Thor,
yeah,
some people do Balder, the return of the sun.
that's right.
Um, some people do Frey. So it's like
Mm.
it, it just depends on what you're doing. It doesn't have to be just that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in truth, I only ever worship the winter solstice and the summer solstice, the sun goddess. I don't bother with any other deity, but I always just tend to think this is my preference, that this is the time of that particular deity and that's the only one I should worship. And so that's what I do. I focus specifically on that deity. Usually, I used to make a sun cross. I've got one on the wall behind us, sprayed in gold, which I made myself. And I used to burn them every year. I used to make one every year and burn it. And then when I made this one, I thought, no, I'm not burning this one. It's staying on the wall. It's been there for 2 years now, so I used to burn them and make a video of it, etc. And I don't know, it just changes, doesn't it? Really, I mean, the theme is still pretty much the same, but I just don't want to
Yeah.
burn the one on the wall. I just like it, it's comforting having it there. Because I was talking to a friend about the Sun Cross the other night, a couple of nights ago, and we had a long conversation, and you mentioned the Sun Cross because he recovered one on a piece of timber which is hundreds of years old here, older than America. In actual fact, it's about 600 years old. This piece of wood, and he recovered it, and there's a sun cross carved into it. and he's incorporated it into his kitchen. And he said to me, he said, "Is it true that, if you have a pagan sun cross in your home, that Christianity can never enter your home?" I said, "Well, in truth," I said, "really," I said, the pagan sun cross is dominating the home." I said, "Because you've put that there." And he asked me about the Celtic cross, and I said, "Well, it's not a Celtic cross." I said, "And my friend Shawnae is always having arguments with the sun cult worshippers who call themselves Catholics." And he said, "Oh, really? What's that about?" So I told him about you, because he's obviously seen you on the channel. I told him about you, and I said, "Yeah, Shawnae's always having arguments with them and pressing the point of view that it's not actually a Celtic cross; it's a sun wheel, a sun cross." you know. And he said, "Where does it come from?" I said, "Well, nobody for certain knows exactly where or how it originated, but my opinion is it's, when the sun is low in midwinter or really cold days, and then you've got the ice crystals in the air and it forms that perfect halo around the sun with the cross. That's
Yeah.
my opinion as to where the sun cross actually came from. Because I said, if you look at Sweden, the rock art there in Sweden, it's just littered with sun crosses. And then, of course, you have to remember the sun cult worship. The clan that just worship the sun, because everything on Earth depends on the sun. No sun, we're all dead. Everything
Yeah.
on Earth dies. Probably some microscopic organisms would survive, like on the moon. But here, no sun, everything dies. So sun cult worship is the most natural thing on Earth. What that term,
Mhm.
people who love being out in the sun, they call them sun worshippers. Well, that's where it comes from. Sun worshippers. And worshipping the sun. I hate the sun blaring in my eyes. And I'm in a room with a huge window, and it's south facing, you know. So when it gets to a certain time in the morning, particularly in midsummer, it takes hours and hours and hours and hours, and it's blazing hot if it's hot. It was 40 centigrade here, like three summers ago, which is hot for England, and the humidity here is uncomfortable, really uncomfortable, because we're an island, 360 degrees C, and oh man, the humidity in this room, with the sun just blaring onto it, and even at midnight, it was still 30 centigrade. So
Right.
I'm not that much of a sun worshipper, but that I want to sit out of it and get burned to a crisp. You know, I like to sit in the shade. I've never been a sun worshipper type in terms of I want to get a lovely suntan, but I like the
I
sun.
always had a thing for the moon, but more recently, I think I like the sun a little bit more. I like to be warm.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing is,
Not exactly like the darkness. Do you know there is actually, well, I think there was something in Scandinavia too, where they would, like, take torches in the fields and,
mm,
like, kinda it's like, warming or bringing the warmth back or
that's right.
whatever.
Yeah.
They actually have a Slavic ritual and a deity that, walks around, they call it the thunder candle, I
Oh,
believe.
wow.
Yeah, and she does the same thing through the fields of winter wheat. Kind of,
Nice.
I think she was turned into a saint in those Slavic countries, but,
Yeah.
uh, now I'm gonna kick myself because I've been seeing this name in my head a million times, and now I can't think of what it is, what goddess she is, and that's going to bother me.
Don't worry about it. It's not a problem. It's not a problem.
Hmm.
We can't all remember everything. I mean, the
Oh,
Slavic
I can't.
well, Slavic paganism is very similar to our own.
It's
Uh,
extremely similar, and
it
from
is.
some of the sources that I've seen, I feel like some of it's quite a bit older.
Could well be. Could well be. But the Germanic tribes, as far as we know, and the Celtic tribes were in Europe before the Slavs. But who knows for certain?
I
I
think,
mean, the
well,
Yamnaya.
along with the Slavs, like, some of those traditions are also visible in, like, farther east, when you get over into India and stuff, they have their
Oh,
own version
yeah,
of
the Amnaya.
Yule, I guess. So I mean, all of these traditions and all of these cultures have their own
Yeah, of course.
variation of
Yeah,
whatever Yule appears to be or
yeah,
whatever solstice appears
absolutely.
to be in their region.
Yeah,
And it even probably varied from tribe to tribe, and as we got older into modern age, from family to family
yeah,
or homestead,
absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, if we were doing it strictly as the ancestors used to do it, no one would be allowed into the village during the
Probably not.
festival, and certainly not to the homestead. Even the
Yeah.
gods would be refused, because they'd drawn up the sacred circle around the village and the homestead and the hearth, etc. It was supposed to be kept, wasn't it? Was it for 3 days? And no one
Mhm.
was allowed to break it and enter it. And there are tales recorded in Scandinavia of people going to villages and being refused entry because they're in a festival, and they were
Right.
performing a ritual, and yeah, that if we were doing it the way the ancestors used to do it, then basically anybody who knocked on your door for 3 days the door wouldn't be answered. You
Yeah.
just open
The
the window
door's
and say,
not
"Bugger
answered.
off."
You don't do any work. Um, uh, with the exception of probably cooking, I
Yeah,
would think, but you don't do any work, you don't do any weaving.
yeah,
That would fit, like in Slavic culture, weaving during that point in time it's probably bad because you're not because all of the good spirits, but also all of the bad spirits are there. So good ancestors, bad
mm,
whatever, and you don't want to be weaving that. I don't know. I can't think of the word energy. That's probably you
yeah,
don't want to be weaving that into your
that's
new
right.
year or whatever. And then at
Yeah,
the end of it, I think there's examples in probably Scandinavian history and Slavic, but they sweep out at the end,
yeah,
like sweep out the corners,
that's right.
like tell the spirits to go home,
That's
tell your
right.
ancestors,
Yeah,
go home, go back to your grave.
clear off. So,
Some
Shawnae, I meant to ask you, previously, how's the candle making going?
It's actually going pretty well.
Oh, good.
More recently, I've scaled back on actually making candles. Um, I don't make anywhere near as much as I used to, but people are starting to like my perfumes and lotions and all of that stuff more.
Yeah,
And there's probably a certain time of year for candles, which is, the cold
yeah,
seasons getting in from
yeah,
about September until February. But I also take, when I'm doing my craft shows and stuff like that, I pretty much take off from December to March
yeah,
just because, a little bit of downtime, have time to restock
yeah,
things and whatnot and get ready for the coming season. I'm actually
yeah,
really excited about the coming season because I haven't had to track down craft shows so much this year now that I'm
yeah,
more in the public in my community.
of course.
Um, and people like my products. People are coming to me like, "Hey, do you want to do this show? Do you want to do that show?" Somebody put my name in for the Women's Expo, so I'm doing a Women's Expo here in March. I'm really excited for that. I don't. It's going good. It's not. It's better than my previous couple of years, and I think you don't really start to see like a gain, I suppose, financial gain
Mm.
until about 5 years into a
Oh, yeah,
business is what I would
absolutely.
think.
I mean, I used to make candles, beeswax, and the cost of beeswax pellets here, or even beeswax blocks, is very expensive. The profit margin is almost non-existent, and I found I was just really making it for myself, which was good. I enjoyed it, but I stopped it because it was costing an awful lot of money, and I
Yeah.
wasn't really making any money out of it. I've still got all the
I
models. I've
give
got
so
loads of
much
them.
stuff away and charge probably less than I really should. I should
Yeah,
probably charge more. I recently upped my prices on a lot of my sprays because I was charging bare minimum,
yeah,
and and I just can't afford to charge bare minimum
that's
anymore
right.
if I'm going to continue to do this and have
Yeah,
it be a sustainable business.
absolutely.
What I
And then,
really
of
need to do
course,
is get in some storefronts.
the other issue, which I'm sure you are aware of, you might not be, but I'm sure you are aware of, is when are you going to start writing this book?
What book? Which one?
Well, you're going to write a book, aren't you?
I thought about that and I started, and some things happened where it just where other people used it and whatever, and I'm just not. I don't know, maybe writing's not my thing.
Oh, maybe you just got writer's block.
That could be too.
It happens,
Other
I get it. I mean, I've written 11 books and I've just scheduled or mind mapped a 12th one. And, it's just now I've got to get my brain into the phase of, right, okay, let's get this done because it's a very intensive experience. I mean, I once wrote a book in 7 days, 80,000 words. Industry standard is 80,000 words. So I wrote it in 6 days. Which took about 12 hours a day, solid writing all the way through, smoking cigarettes like a trooper, coffee, tea, etc., bite to eat, blitzed my way through it. And then on the seventh day, I edited it, put it all to bed, made sure that the typesetting was okay, and published it. And 2 days later, it was banned.
Yeah, I
So,
don't even
yeah,
I
that
don't
was,
know what I'd even write about. I don't.
yeah, you do know. You do know. You do know what you're going to write about. It's already in your mind. I know it is. I can reach into it and clutch it straight out of it. I know what you want to write about because you can read
It,
me and I can read you, and that's the way it's always been. And I know what you want to write about, and you need to write about it. It won't be till late next year, late summer, around about August time. That you'll really get into the right frame of mind and sit down and make more progress on it. And the following year, you should be able to publish it. you know. And if you want to retain some form of or total editorial control over it, just make sure you proofread it properly and don't use AI, it's dreadful. And even Grammarly, it's awful because it just looks so fake. And then publish it on Amazon. And you'll retain full control over it and you'll get more royalties out of it as well if you do that. But you will write a book. And once you've got a taste for it, you'll probably write two or three, you know? Because it does become a little bit addictive, but you've got to get over that first hurdle. It's like, I want to run in this horse race, but the thing is, it's such a long race, and I've got all these reservations and fears, etc. And then you run the race and you win. It's like, I want to race again.
it's so hard to because honestly, nobody's thoughts, none of our thoughts are our own thoughts. We've all heard something that's made us think a thought that made us thought that that thought was original,
Mm.
or you know what I mean? So it's so hard to know whether if it's just you or if you're expanding on something somebody said to you once or
But does it matter? Because if you're not plagiarizing someone else's work, or infringing their copyright in any way, shape, or form, how does that matter? Because ultimately, it's your work, it's your words, it's your thoughts, basically. And if some people say, oh, well, such and such wrote about that as well so what? That doesn't mean he or she is the absolute authority on any subject. It's like if you look at Edred Thorson, I mean, like 30 years ago, it was like, oh, he's the absolute authority on everything to do with runes and paganism, Odinism. and nobody else should write anything else. But that's not the case, is it? Edward Thorson has his plays, and he's a very good author. He's very knowledgeable, but there's always room for someone else to do something. And if you wrote a book explaining, some of your spiritual techniques and how you learned to practice them and how, and the results that you've yielded from them, then it's entirely yours.
Oh, that might cause a stink in some crowds. The academic crowd.
Oh, give a shit. Look, Shawnae, I mean, my
I'm
book.
having such a hard time right now with the academics because, yes, I do agree that we need to know the lore and that we should understand the culture of those times, and we should practice the things that our ancestors did. But it's so hard for me sometimes to get around some of that stuff because I'm like, okay, well, we're looking, and people will disagree with me about this, but the Christianized versions of our lore and the things that are coming from these people, like I had said earlier, there are different variations of everything. We're not going to ever know everything that our ancestors did. And I think people get caught up in the romanticism of trying to pretend to be their ancestors
I
versus
can't do it.
the
I just can't do it.
ritual of actually creating your tradition based off of their tradition.
Yeah.
It's not a free for all and you do your own thing and this and that, but I don't know. I feel like right now, with two big groups, we have the Catholic Church of Asatru and we have the Protestants.
Yeah, we did.
And then all these other kindreds and little
That's
groups
right.
are the other little sects. And everybody's trying to set things up. When you get a small group, you do have a certain amount of order and whatnot. But once you get into the larger groups, and it becomes some kind of structure that resembles Christianity. And then you get all that dogma that goes about with
Yeah.
it. And this person's, well, you're not doing it right because this book says that you do it this way. And this book says that you do it this
Yeah,
way. Well,
I
I don't
know.
like that. So I'm just going to
I
do
know.
that. And it's just like, will you Twitch? Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Here's my big thing with all of it. There's no blood on the altar. Are you even really making a sacrifice to your gods or your
Yeah.
ancestors? Nobody's doing that anymore. I don't
Yeah.
see all of these lore purists and people preaching orthodoxy slaughtering or not slaughtering, but sacrificing an animal for Yule.
Yeah.
The Yule boar. Are you going to
Yeah.
make your oath on a boar
Yeah.
that you sacrifice this year,
Yeah.
or is it going to be you know fucking smash a peppermint pig and
Yeah.
have it be symbolic? That's not. All these purists just kill me.
Yeah.
Like there's no blood in our fields anymore.
Yeah.
They're not sprinkling the fields in the winter time
Yeah.
with the blood of their sacrifice,
That's
are
right.
there? There's no blood on the hearthstones anymore either, is there? You
No,
know what I mean? So like
I do.
this stuff can't be as pure and as right as they want it to be,
It
and
can
it's
only ever
just
be your way of doing it. That's my opinion. It's like the book I wrote called Shadow Soul. So, I mean, I like the book. I enjoyed writing it. I enjoyed collaborating with the people who were in the book, and yet I get comments mainly from people in the AFA. The AFA. Oh,
the Catholic Church.
yeah, the Catholic Church of Odinism, absolutely, or the Catholic Church of Paganism, more to the point. And
I feel like with these bigger structures, it's basically just the church freaking
yeah,
dripping with runes
that's right.
and banners.
Yeah, and they say to me,
Lots of SE
"Oh,
tops.
this book, I don't like this book. So what? Don't buy it." There's the
Yeah,
first
don't
response
buy
to
it,
that.
don't read it.
Don't buy it. Don't read it. So what? Who gives a shit? And your next point is, well, I don't like it because you've just made this up as you've gone along. Really? So you're a Puritan and you've not made up anything as you've gone along at all, in actual fact. I
Don't
said,
you
so
think that our ancestors, especially coming from different tribes in different areas, that there was a certain amount of flux? I mean, not every family did everything the same. I
of course,
guarantee you that they did not.
absolutely. I mean, the AFA, as you know, I've got a big, big problem about men practicing Sather. And they always try and suggest that only effeminate men, they do it from a safe distance. They don't do it to your face, you know, where
No,
home
no, they
gang,
don't. They won't
yeah.
ever say it to your face.
They do it from a safe distance where home gang can't come into play. And they'll say, this is effeminate, etc. And I said to you before on a previous podcast, I had this, I was talking to Valhalla Silver, who made the jewelry for the Northman film. And
Okay.
I'd see them occasionally in York during the York Viking Festival, and I was talking to them about it. And I said to Callum there, and I said, so the way you deal with that when we were talking about Sather is, I said to him, so are you saying then that Odin is effeminate and essentially homosexual? I said, because the Alpha there is listening to everything that you say. And if he's
Well,
not,
that's probably what Jack would say.
yeah. And then they're like, oh, no, 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 no. No, no, I'm not saying that. That's a very, very good response. That's like something Odin would say. I'll say, yeah, of course, it's something Odin would say because Freya taught him the the mistress of Sather, and she did it for a reason because he's the god of mysteries. So we're told. Do you understand what I'm
He's a
saying?
god of a lot of things.
He
I think
is.
people fail to remember that. He's the Yule father, too.
Absolutely. And this is what I say, to them basically is that, there's no such thing as the right way or wrong way of practicing it. I remember the last time I was at the Jorvik Viking Festival because this horrible infestation of wokeism now, you see, in paganism now in England, and they're a real pain in the backside. And this guy's saying, "Oh, well, you should be careful." He said, talking about progressives like that. I said, "Well, why should I be? Why should I be careful?" I said, "What are you going to do? Hit me with your Dane axe?" I mine. I said, "Well, you haven't got the bollocks to do it." So don't sit there and suggest that you might do this or
Oh,
anything
that's
else.
what bugs me about a lot of these heathens, even the folkish ones. Like some of these people, unless they've been in the military or to prison for it, they've never killed a person.
You
You know
know,
what I mean? They've probably never even shot an animal,
yeah.
some of them.
This is what
And they're
yeah, it's
like,
true.
I'm doing all of this for my ancestors. And it's like, do you even shoot deer? Do you even
Well,
fish? Do
Shawnae,
you even
look, I actually, it's funny because I watched that film Unforgiven, with Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman a few months
Yes.
ago, and it was one night, and I just didn't feel like doing anything. I thought, oh, I'll watch Unforgiven. I've not seen that for years. And there's that end scene where Gene Hackman, who plays the sheriff, and he says to William Money, he says, "You be William Money out of Missouri, killed women and children and all." And he says, "I killed just about everything that walked or moved at one time or another." And I thought, well, until I was 17, so did I. And I had
Right.
shooting riots on farms, and the farmers would tell you what to kill, including dogs and cats. They wanted them killed if they were trespassing on their land. Um, I worked in the slaughterhouse, which is heavy, intensive killing, day by day.
Sure.
And then I remember one Saturday morning, it was raining heavily, and I was down by the old train lines. We used to have a thing here called the Midland Railway. During the British Industrial Revolution, they shipped a huge amount of coals out of the coal fields here all over the country, and they built this massive rail network called the Midland Railway. And so the remnants of it used to be there then. I don't know if they're there now because of modernization. And I'd got the rifle with me and I shot this blackbird. And I went along and picked it up and I thought, well, why am I doing this? What is this all? What's this bird done to me? Why am I doing this? I just thought this has got to stop. And that was it. I went home, I put the rifle away and I've never picked it up since. And I don't intend to
Mm.
either. But like a friend of mine, he's got land up in the northeast, and he's saying, "Oh, you can come here and you can fish with me, etc." And I've got shooting rights. I said, "Well, I don't want to do any shooting because I made a vow when I was 17 years old, that day, not to go back to doing it ever again, and I never have gone back to doing it again." So the thing is, in the past, I've killed hundreds of things. Just about everything that
Mhm.
crawled or walked at one time or another, as it says in that film. And to be honest with you, I look back on it and think, I don't understand why I ever did that. Because the person I am now is
Well, I
totally
think that's
different.
ingrained in us. That
It was
it is.
childhood,
It's something
environment.
that you have to do.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, to survive, people had to kill animals. I mean, you do it amazes me sometimes kids or just some people, it's like, where the hell do you think chicken comes from? Where do you think
yeah,
beef comes from? Where do you think venison, bear meat, elk meat, where do you think it comes from?
of
It's
course.
not just packaged at the fucking grocery store. Like, somebody
Yeah,
has to kill that
that's
and
right.
clean it. You know what I mean?
And
Like, and
cleaning it
people
is
don't
messy.
understand.
Gutting it, disemboweling it is the messiest part of it, and removing the
That
head.
can be really stinky,
Yeah,
and
very
that is not
unpleasant.
my favorite part.
I mean, we used to catch
Actually, I
rabbits.
need to get out there and kill a deer. I'm gonna live trap one of my bunnies, maybe.
Well, we used to catch rabbits years ago, and I
We
used
got
to,
a ton of them out there.
yeah, we used to love rabbit casserole. And in this area, because it's a rural area, well, it was then. It's not so much now. You could get anything from grouse, partridge, pheasant, venison, rabbit, hare. You could buy all of this wild fare. And there used to be a great pub called the Awesome Groom. It's still there. It's just not a great pub anymore because it's been taken over by Green and King, who have this really bland diet menu, as far as I'm concerned. I don't like it. But what it used to be before, at this time of year, you could book your Yuletide dinner there, and you could pick from a menu of everything that had been killed locally, shot in the fields, and
Oh, I like that.
it was fantastic. You
I
could even get
really
wood
like
pigeon
that.
pie, wood pigeon pie, and wood pigeon is just wood chicken
Wood
anyway.
pigeon.
Wood pigeon. So wood pigeon is basically what they call here wood chicken. It tastes a
So
little
is
bit
it
like
like a
pheasant.
grouse or a pheasant or?
It's a really large, beautiful pigeon, you know, and it
Oh,
tastes pretty much like pheasant game, rich
okay.
game, you know. And people would be like, "Oh, you gonna eat that?" Well, yes. I mean, I've been trying to get pheasant again this year because there was one guy here who never gave up his shooting rights, but he's old now, and he used to shoot partridge and pheasant, etc., and get most things, But you just can't get it off him now because he's old and he's over the hill basically. But yeah, I mean, they were all the traditional things we used to do at Yuletide now, and everything's just so bloody awful and commercialized.
Yeah, yeah, it
I
is.
just don't like it. I don't like
Yes, it
commercialization.
is. I wonder if people still like, because this is a time for oath making too.
Mm,
So I wonder if when they're doing their oath swearing, are they doing it on the boar? Are they using blood of any kind? Are they
yeah,
using their own blood?
yeah. Absolutely. See, if I do a ritual and I do a runic invocation of any description, uh, I stain it with my own blood. I don't sacrifice anything. But I remember years ago being in a relationship with a nurse, and she was a vegetarian, and she was talking about, vegetarianism and meat eating, etc. And I said, yeah, I said, but that's not really accurate, is it? I said, what you've just said about blood. I said, because you drink a lot of carrot juice. I said, and that is the blood of the carrot. I said, so you're killing all of these carrots, you're rooting them before their time, yeah? I said, and you're squeezing all of these carrots and blending them and extracting all of their blood, yeah, to drink it. I said, so, you're drinking carrot blood. Oh, don't say that. She says, that is disgusting. I was like, get a grip, man. Get a grip. Don't be
So
such a
it's on
snowflake.
Philly.com.
And I said to her as well, I said, the grass. I said, you said you love the smell of cooked grass. She said, well, I do. I said, well, that's grass blood. I said, the grass has been chopped in half by a mower,
Is it
and it,
grass blood or
yeah,
grass sweat?
yeah, absolutely. And the scent, the aroma from it is it's pain that you're celebrating. And I used to tease her no end with this type, this type of thing. But yeah, I mean, that relationship didn't last long, obviously. She was a pagan as well. And, but she was one of those really, how could I put it, new age liberal type pagan.
Granola?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I caught her one night in the kitchen growling. And I said, What are you growling for?" And she said, I wasn't growling." I said, "You were." I said, You were measuring out the couscous." And she actually put about 4 grains of the couscous back in the box. Seriously, you know how small couscous is? And I was like, "Wow,
Yeah.
this one's really fastidious, isn't it?" And she was growling. She used to growl under her breath. And I say to her, You're a psychiatric nurse." I said, "But," I said, "in truth," I said, "I think you're more fucked up than your patients." Because, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, really." I said, "I think you
They
spent
usually are.
far too long around these people, basically." And I said, "And it's rubbed off of you." And I said, "What's all that growling about is the deep-seated anger inside you, which you're trying to release, but because you haven't got a natural outlet for it, because you think anger is bad and it's negative, yeah, this is why you're doing this growling." And she'd just be like, then you catch her and she'd stop, you know. And yeah, there's a lot of bizarre people around, but no one's perfect. We've all got foibles and idiosyncrasies, etc. But I mean, and that really is the story of Yuletide. I mean, we celebrate this festival because it's the midwinter festival. It's Yule. It's what our ancestors did. But in truth, we will never be able to do it exactly the way the ancestors did it, because nobody
Yeah,
knows
we weren't there.
exactly the way they did it, and it varied from village to village, and from household to household. And a priest
Exactly.
in one area, a gothy as they call it, um, you know, may have well have said, "Well, this is the way we should do it." And then the village 2 miles away, they'd say, "Oh no, this is the way we should do it." You know,
Yeah.
it's like when you were talking about Christianity
Somebody might sacrifice a pig, somebody might sacrifice a goat, somebody might sacrifice a horse.
or a
It
goose.
depends on where you are.
Yeah, the golden goose. How did turkey become? People say, "Oh, that's an American thing," but the issue
Yeah.
is, how did that become a thing? Because that tradition was only imported. If you look at America, when you're American, the way I always see America is that it really began with New England, hence the name New England. And so it brought
Mhm.
over from England all of its traditions, didn't it? Do you understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And then they started to split off into different branches. The accent and dialect changed, etc., over the decades. And then obviously that branched out into, you know, the turkey, etc.,
Yeah,
and
depending
other
on
traditions.
who's where. Like in the Carolinas and the Appalachians, there was a lot of Scottish
Yeah,
people.
that's right. Yeah.
So their dialect came from there, and like even Kentucky, and then the Midwest was more Scandinavian and
Yeah.
German, and
Yeah.
so
The Bible
it's
Belt.
Serbian. You have all of these
Mm.
different
Yeah.
groups.
All these competing groups. And so, therefore, really, people who say in any faith that it's like that schism between Catholicism and the Anglican Church, or the Church of England as it became, is anyone who says there is only one way to do it ultimately will cause a faction. That's what absolutism does. The natural reaction to absolutism, because humans don't like being told what to do, they don't really like uniformity, everybody being the same, doing the same thing. It'll cause a faction. And from that faction, another faction will grow, and so on and
It
so
becomes
forth.
cult-like.
Yeah, absolutely.
It becomes cult-like when you try to organize past a certain amount of people.
Yeah, that's
And then
absolutely
it's
right.
just like, why I've seen some posts and things like that about individualism, and
Yeah, yeah.
individualism is bad and whatever. And it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, we're all individuals anyway.
Yeah.
And yes, our ancestors did have individual households,
Mm,
and they were individual human beings.
yeah,
They were individuals in charge of a certain thing within their tribe.
that's right.
So, like, you know what mean? And they all had a different kind of spin on it, and they
Yeah.
all did like you said, it varied from village to village and
Absolutely.
state to state, country to
Yeah.
country.
And it still does, and it
I
will always
just
be that way.
cannot handle these purists. They use the lore and stuff like that as like doctrine. These things that
Yeah,
Saxo and why can't I think of anybody else's name right now? The main people, the key sources,
yeah.
they use all of these people and what they
Servicemen.
wrote about our people as doctrine
Yeah,
for their orthodoxy. And
that's
it's like
right.
if you wanted that kind of structure, religious structure, or whatever within your tribe or within your kindred, why don't you just go back to the church?
Yeah, absolutely. This is what I've said about the AFA and its Christo-paganism. It's funny because, like, a couple of years ago, a friend came over. I've not seen him for a while, and he said, "Shall we go to Southern Minster?" And which is like about 20 miles from here. And it was in the Diocese of York, so it would have been part of the five boroughs, uh, Viking England, after the Great Heathen Army. Well, particularly after Alfred the Great struck that peace treaty with Guthrum, and he saved Wessex, not England. But where I live, because this town where I live was actually formed by the Great Heathen Army, it's called Estwick, means that a clearing east of the wood. It was felled by the Great Heathen Army who founded this town, and so we was at. I said we'll go to Sutherminster because there's a very interesting flagstone there before one of the minor altars. I said, really, what's that? I said, and the flagstone used to read that 90% of churches in England were formed on the sites of pagan worship, i.e., it was explained in the history of Sutherminster that it was formed or founded on the site of a pagan worship, which were the Romans, and it would have been the Celts before them. And I went over there and I said to one of the guys who worked in the minster, I said, where's the flagstone gone? Oh, which flagstone is that? I said, there used to be a flagstone here. Because I went there years ago, a friend called Dean Lambert, another Odinist, and he said, "Oh," he says, I said, "Well, no point saying it wasn't there." I said, "Because I can see all the marks where it's been removed and then polished over and replaced." "Oh, yes," and of course I caught him by the short and curlies. Yeah, he said the memorial to it has been moved to another building over the way there. So if you walk through there and go over there, he said you'll see the memorial to it. So we walked through, looked at the memorial, and I said to Keith, I said, "Yeah, look, you can see." He said, "Yeah, right." I said, "That's amazing." I said, "Yeah, but even more amazing," I said, "the fact that they actually removed that flagstone." And when we went back into the minster, the bigwig was there, wasn't he? Stood there, glaring at us, the bishop. And I just looked at him, I thought, oh, right. So I went over to three members of his staff, female members, and explained to them, because they said, "Oh, what's this all about?" They weren't nasty about it, and I told them about it. And they said, "Crikey, you're really knowledgeable." I said, "Yeah." I said, "And do you actually know the history of this place?" I said, when it became a Roman site of pagan worship. I said, prior to that, it would have been Celtic. I said, and then when we get into the Viking age, I said, the Great Heathen Army, I said, about less than a mile down the road there at a bend, I said, in the River Trent, there was a battle between the Great Heathen Army and the Saxons, Anglo-Saxons, and the Danes held the field. It's recorded in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. And they crossed the Trent, and the first place they came to was here to sack what you would have called the Minster. I said, well, it wouldn't have been a Minster, it would have probably been only 10% of the size then, because it would have been a Saxon church. And then they went on into Nottingham, which was called Schnettinger House. And the extreme reaction to it, it just made me laugh because I thought to myself, this is the Church of England, but this guy who's come down to glare at us, is behaving just like a Catholic bishop. And this is the church that broke away from Catholicism to get away from that straitjacket, that strangulation of thou shalt do this and thou shalt not do that, to form its own church, yeah? And then here we are trying to flesh out some alternative history, a different way of doing things. Like we've said, there's always a different way of doing things. And they've covered it up and moved it to another part of the site. Then the bishop comes down, he's stood there, with his arms behind his back, like he was a head teacher with a cane, and you could see he was absolutely maniacal, fanatical look on his eyes. And I just looked at him and just carried on talking to his staff. And, they were absolutely fascinated because they were getting a history lesson that they didn't know anything about. And a history lesson about the actual site where they worked. And, that's the point I'm making is, they've taken these, it's like selective amnesia, isn't it? It's like, we don't like this, we don't like that, we don't like the other, we don't like that bit, we don't like that bit. So we'll just throw all that away and create a new narrative. And anybody who doesn't check into the new narrative is a heretic. And the same thing is happening in paganism.
That's heresy. That's exactly what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
that's what's happening in paganism now. Is you've got the heretic makers. So they look at me as like a heretic. Oh, he's written a book about Satan, men practicing Satan. This is heresy. So in
Yeah.
essence, they'll be thinking, well, maybe we should burn him at the stake, because like the Catholics used to do to pagans. Because that's their mentality in the AFA. That's my experience of dealing with the AFA. It's the most fanatically rabid, cultish organisation in the whole of paganism I've encountered anywhere in the world, And
There are a lot of good people that I met through the AFA, and from when I even very first started in there, it has changed dramatically, and there's so many kindreds and so many individuals that have left, but there's just as many that have come in. And I don't disagree with some of what they're trying to do. I think in the beginning, when Steve started it, it was probably a great idea, and it's something that we really needed. But now it's like, you're
gone
gonna
too
pay
far.
10% of your check so we can convert a church into a Hof?
No.
And do what?
Yeah.
Like, why aren't you guys building it, buying land and building a Hof and a bay and all of these things? Like, that's what we should be doing. I shouldn't say we, I'm not in the AFA anymore, but that's like, if that's something you're going to do and you want to build a community, that's how it should be done. Build it yourself. But I do get the appeal of, well, the building's already there, so we can convert it and make it ours. Like,
But
there's so
surely,
many
don't you think
things.
that there is now what we're seeing on the collective right? Remember earlier when I asked you about the work you'd done on grifters, on the right, the collective right. It's a problem all over the Western world. I think, there's an awful lot of grifting going on. If you remember, I told you about Red Ice TV, and how they were grifting for donations to pay for their next baby. And I was like, wow, you want to have another baby.
Oh, that's weird to me.
Why do you need to grift off other people to pay for your baby? And I'm like, this is just, to me, it was just like astonishing. And I made a comment about it, and they treat me with not red eyes, but ice cold contempt. And that's cool because I don't care. Everybody's
I
different, but
don't
I'm not
even know
doing any
what they
grifting.
do. I wonder if that's not their main source of income, is the subscriptions and like the podcasts and super chats and all of that stuff, along with the merch stores and whatever. Like, if that's their main source of income, to a certain extent, I can see asking for that, because you don't give yourself pay raises when all you
Yeah.
do is podcast.
No,
But at the same time, like, if you have a regular job and stuff, why is it that you're asking people for money to raise a child? Maybe then, I don't want to say don't have white babies,
no,
but
not at
also,
all.
like, if you can't afford to have babies, then maybe
Yeah.
don't, or wait a little bit longer until you can.
This
I
is
don't
what
know.
I said to them. I said, it's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen is that, in paganism, is that you want to breed more white babies, according to them. That's what they said. Can you help us to have a new baby? And it wasn't part of their merch, their store, or anything else. This was a separate fundraising appeal that they did specifically to grift donations to pay for their new baby. And I was like, the grifting is just endemic. It's everywhere. And of course, there's no surprise because they're very closely connected to Mark Collett, who's one of the biggest grifters in so-called British nationalism, basically. But Anyway, Shawnae, we'll
There's a
end
lot
it
of
for tonight.
grifting all over the place. I think that's probably why I hate asking people to like buy my stuff and like
Mm.
because I do feel like I'm like, oh, am I grifting or
No, no, you're not grifting. Now, look, if I write a book and I advertise that book and say, this is where you can buy it from, that's not grifting. You're not asking for free money. My books have been £10 mostly. Some of them are even £7, £9, etc. And I've kept the prices deliberately low to put them within affordable reach for 20 years, over 20 years. Yeah, they're getting a product in return from it. I'm not saying to Fred and Joe, look, I want to do this and I want you to pay for it because I'm just so fucking cool and I deserve it
yeah,
and I'm
I want to go to
worthwhile.
Mexico, help me pay for it. I don't mind like when I see a family that's struggling, like if they're having trouble and it's gonna be holiday season and they need a little help, but like, do you need food or
Yeah,
see a fundraiser for like a funeral or
yeah,
something along
totally
those
different.
lines? There was a house fire,
Yeah,
somebody's car broke down.
that's right.
Things like when communities come together to do those things, it
Yeah,
can be a really good deal.
yeah,
But like when it's like your fifth fundraiser for your, whatever,
yeah.
I don't know. I can't
No,
even
it's just
think about it.
look.
It gets
I
to be a little
remember.
bit.
Can you remember about? I think it was 4 years ago when our cousin Amanda died, and she was, short of money, and she died of cancer, and I did a fundraiser to give the money to her children to help pay for the funeral. That's not
Yeah,
grifting. I didn't keep any of it. That went to. I even put, £50 into it, which is like about $65,
right.
and everyone gave what they could afford because that it was a special case, it was exceptional circumstances. The poor girl died, the poor woman died and left her children behind, and she needed help, and this was the help that we gave her, and I actually gave her the money even before she died. I said, do something with this money before you die. Do you understand what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And she did. And then everything was taken care of properly after she died. That's a different matter entirely. But to my mind, and I don't give a toss what they think at Red Eyes TV because I don't care what anybody in that faction thinks about me. We're chalk and cheese and that's all there is to it. I'm speaking for me, I'm not speaking for you. Yeah, but I believe what they did. Um, I we want a new baby and we want you to pay for it is just totally unacceptable. And they're all at it, that lot are. Every single one of them, all the Collet mob, and they're all part of the Collet mob, basically. And he watches this channel because he's always slagging me off, and so what? Because I don't really care what he has to say, come and say it to me in person. He won't do that. He's a coward. But the thing is, if you want to have a baby, pay for it yourself. Don't ask other people to fund your baby. That's my attitude because that is just pure and utter grifting. You know, if you make brilliant candles, which you do, and our other cousin, can you remember years ago in the Odinist Order, she used to make candles as well, very similar to what you did. She sold them at a fairly cheap rate. That's not grifting, that is just selling. We're just
Mhm.
selling a product. And if people don't want to buy it, that's fair enough. People don't have to buy my books. But it's odd enough because, or oddly enough, is all of these people in the AFA and others who've attacked me for my book, Shadow Soul, well, I've got some really bad news for them because it's the best-selling book this year. It's my best-selling book. It's totally outperformed all the others. you know, and that must be a real downer for them because it's suddenly become very popular in the community in pagan circles, and more people are buying it, and nearly every month it's the bestseller. So tough shit, suck that one up, and
Mm.
that's all I have to say to them. So you don't like it, fair enough, don't buy it. But I'm not grifting, I'm giving you something in return, and you don't like the book, yeah, absolutely. I go into a bookstore, I don't feel obligated to buy every single book in the store.
Right.
Do you get the point I'm making, Shawnae? And so we're going to have to
Yeah.
close now because we've been on for over an hour and a half, and it's
Oh,
been
geez. Yeah.
yeah, well, look, it is Yuletide when all's said and done. It's Yule or Yule, and depending on what part of the world you come from and how you pronounce it. So Look, whatever wish you've made for, to the All Father, I hope it's delivered to you. But I think personally, the best gift you'll receive next year is starting that book. That's my opinion. Okay? So you have a great
Yeah.
time, and I'll see you in the new year, and we can have a talk about something else, whatever else, basically, you know. But look after yourself and look after the cat, and good luck with the children and the candles and everything else. And I'll see you soon, Shawnae. Take care.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for
You.
turning up. See you. Bye bye.